Hello, everyone at Conv2X. My name is John Hatchell, and I am the CEO and co-founder of Tie Health. I'm here to talk to you today about a platform that we built and to discuss our smart contract solution for transactional inefficiency in medical device procurement. So before we get started, just a few fun facts about surgical services here in the U.S. So first, nearly half of all accounted hospital revenue is actually generated by surgical procedures. Another fact, most of these procedures rely on third-party supply chains for medical devices necessary to deliver surgical care. And that today, the medical device market operates almost exclusively by way of paper transactions. So let's look at surgical services kind of by the numbers here in the U.S. When we look at facilities, hospitals and ambulatory surgical centers, we estimate there being about 11,500 plus that offer a surgical care. Obviously, that number is growing each and every day with the trend of many inpatient procedures being moved to outpatient centers, specifically in orthopedic, spine, and even cardiac. When we look at surgeries performed with a medical device per year, that number is estimated to be about 22 million. And when we look at the medical device market in the U.S. as a whole, in terms of consumption of these products, that number is estimated to be $160 billion by 2025. So when you look at this in totality, it's a rather large problem. So let's discuss the current standards for medical device procurement and transactions as they are today. So we've already mentioned the paper ledger records, but when we talk about paper ledger records, that is the record of implants that are captured in the OR. And that paper record is then sent to multiple departments in a hospital, typically purchasing, billing, materials, and then they're even sent to the vendors. And they act as the really only true record of what transpired in an operating room during a surgical claim. And because they're using paper ledger records, that brings us to point number two. It's very difficult to identify these transactions. So they're actually utilizing PHI, MRNs, patient names, date of birth to identify these surgical procedures. And that's the way that business is done in communicating it. From a inventory standpoint, hospitals and vendors almost exclusively operate in consignment inventory arrangements where a vendor will park their inventory at a facility and it's utilized on an as-needed basis. And the problem with this is that obviously the hospitals and ASCs, they don't have an actual record or an accurate record of the inventory, while the vendors do. And then subsequently on the other side of the facility side, a lot of the other inventory that's owned, the hospital or the ASC will have a record of that, but the vendor doesn't have any visibility. So there's just a real disconnect there. Which really impacts preparedness when talking about delivering patient care. And obviously, relative to these transactions, parties are forced to communicate through conventional mediums. So that means a lot of utility of fax, email, text messages, you name it, which is not the best practice, especially when we're factoring in point number two, as means of identification. Because of the complexity of this supply chain, facilities tend to really relinquish a lot of their responsibilities to their vendor partners. And because of that, it really leaves them subject to a lot of issues such as fraud, waste, and abuse, which obviously are hot, big ticket items when you look at added expense to healthcare. So an area that certainly can be improved upon. And product safety is loosely managed. Again, a lot of this product safety ultimately falls back down to the vendors and their representatives, many who are on site to deliver, quality control through representation in operating room theaters around the country to acknowledge or assure providers that products are being as intended. So why the focus now? Well, I think we just got to look at the numbers here and to really understand the gravity of the problem. So when we look at healthcare spend in the U.S., obviously a big portion of it, and the largest portion of it of spend is administrative, and a lot of that can be tied to administrative complexity. When we look, everyone's probably well aware of the cybersecurity and issues in healthcare today, and how much of a threat is out there. It was estimated last year 34% of healthcare facilities were subject to some form of ransomware attack. And another estimate of 1 in 3,000 emails containing malware, which is really troublesome in a business process such as this in a healthcare facility, considering how much they rely on this type of messaging between parties to do business. 400+ million devices are recalled a year, and there's not a really good way to identify right now in time-sensitive recalls, patients who were impacted or product that was impacted. Fraud and abuse, which we've briefly mentioned earlier, obviously accounts for about $80 to $90 billion a year to the U.S. healthcare system. And then medical devices as a whole account for 6% of all healthcare spend. So why did we choose smart contracts? And as a company, we made the decision to use DAML as kind of the basis for our build and our platform. Well, we kind of rely on 5 tenets in our decision making and why we chose that, and we'll go through those now. So obviously, the security aspect of smart contracts, being able to have entitlements for users that are embedded into our system, privacy, right? Smart contracts only disclose the necessary information to each party, during the functionality of whatever aspect of that process they're trying to carry out. From the trust side, obviously trust is a big issue in healthcare, especially when dealing with third-party vendors or third-party business partners. So each action is recorded on a private or a permissioned ledger, which gives it a much more closed approach as opposed to it being decentralized and requiring further key management. Interoperability, which is obviously a very important theme in healthcare today, and an area of an area that needs a much needed improvement. And smart contracts can certainly deliver that by allowing secure communication between legacy systems and parties, and the fact that information can be cryptographically stored allows a lot of these transactions to be tamper-proof. So what are we trying to actually solve through utilizing smart contracts? Well, first of all, it's drastically improving the transactional efficiency, right? Enabling end-to-end commerce between these facilities and their vendor business partners, while eliminating the bad practice of sharing PHI as a means of identification in transactions. So we also want to focus on safety, right? And so validating that products are being used as intended by the companies or by the FDA, while also ensuring preparedness for surgery through digital accountability measures, which currently just don't exist. And then obviously the interoperability piece, right? Creating multi-party connectivity is huge. And more importantly, it adds to the trust factor because it provides transparency on data that's typically been siloed in business. So this is a look at the functional features we were able to build by utilizing smart contracts. So the creation of an actual surgical event and the scanning and adding of products used in a procedure. Compliance rules, and the compliance rules really are our way of being able to validate product use, validate product safety, and we've built rules in that take factors in such as expiration, safety, product compatibility, and we intend to expound upon these use cases as we move on. Automating creation of purchase orders, which helps to remove a lot of these manual processes that currently exist. The sending of these orders direct to vendors, we've been able to automate that process through smart contracts, something that had to be essentially validated or manually processed by multiple people in a healthcare facility, depending on what their standard protocols were currently. And purchase out order validation by the vendor, right? Validating that, again, the pricing and the products used matched up with with what was on the shelf or what was sent to the facility. Automated creations of invoices, which follow that same theme. Automating the inventory updates, so making sure that we close the loop on what was used and being able to restock or replenish these products so that, again, a facility is prepared for their other procedures. Returning products back to vendors, and the fact that keeping their inventory stock and SKUs lean, so they don't have 40,000 items in a system. They're managing that more effectively with the data that they now have access to. Recalls of products. We talked about how many products are subject to recall a year and how difficult that is to identify patients. A system like this can allow for a retrospective look back of patients or products impacted and allow them to act accordingly. Post-procedure forms, a big problem is, just communicating this information and things getting lost in translation. And this allows for that information to be shared instantaneously. And then the messenger function, right? Giving these folks an opportunity to get away from these conventional mediums that have been standard for so many years, and protect a lot of this data leakage that continues to happen on a day-by-day basis. So we obviously need to validate this use case in the surgical theater, and that's what we're actually doing right now with our partner here in Connecticut. Day Kimball Hospital in Putnam, Connecticut has been our partner in this, and we kicked off in September. And with our implementation, integrating into their existing Cerner system that exists within the hospital, training and digitizing their contracts. We basically can take their entire vendor contracts that exist, digitize them, and carry them out in real time. And then right now, what we're in the process of doing is capturing 90 days of this data and publishing our findings here in the end of Q4, to validate the utilization of smart contracts in healthcare in this arena. So what are our major goals of this pilot? And I think it goes back a lot to what we're trying to establish with the use case. Obviously, we want to first off eliminate PHI as a means of identification for transactions. We want to reduce the administrative complexity that currently exists in standard operating procedures, and the burden on a lot of staff, and reduce these FTE hours through efficiencies. So it can be more beneficial for hospitals in that they have a more cost-effective solution in process. Obviously, minimizing waste is a huge issue here, right? Both through using compliance rules to ensure that products are being used accordingly, and catching all those never events that tend to happen, such as wrong side implants, expired implants, products that were improperly opened and the product compatibility is not there. We're very confident in our ability that digital checks and balances can do that, and then furthermore improve the life cycle of existing stock that is on a facility shelf to ensure that they're getting the most out of stock that's purchased, and that they're utilizing it and cycling it through so that waste is improved. And then providing transparency on the entire end-to-end process to prevent fraud and abuse, which unfortunately, because so much of this is so complex and so much is relinquished in order just to make it day by day, by providing visibility and creating a digital audit trail of these transactions, these vendor partners and these representatives who are fully compensated by how much product is used, they are certainly incentivized to use higher cost products, to use more product in areas where they don't need to. This truly gives a facility the ability to have the visibility on all of this and manage it more proactively as opposed to reactively, which has kind of been the standard for many years. So this is a look at kind of what we anticipate a facility's ROI being and the impact that smart contracts can potentially have in a facility. And we hope to validate that through our pilot and in validating all of these hypotheses that we have currently. So if you look at the top here in this chart, you can see we account for all types of spend, and this would be, from 5 million all the way up to 25. So you could, have a small ASC at the $5 million range all the way up to a very high volume, large surgical services department in a major institution in the $25 to $30 million range. We factor in an average selling price of around $4,500, which is all encompassing for procedures that would, which go from, very high price, high cost products such as orthopedic revision, cardiac procedures, spine procedures, all the way down to the really, smaller cases, which would be your sports medicine, small bone and joint cases, things of that nature, nerve grafts, just simple screw procedures, things of that nature. And so it's just really all encompassing for that. And that's kind of where we see the ASP coming in for most facilities around the country. And then when you look at the potential cost savings, obviously, we're going to reiterate a lot of the themes that we've already discussed. So, from when you look at waste minimization, we estimate that being about 0.7%. FTE reduction via the automation piece, right? And not just, hey, we're not saying to facilities, look, we're gonna take people out of you're gonna fire people or get rid of them, but you're gonna be able to repurpose those hours, right? So it's more FTE hour reduction is the way we would probably the way we would articulate that. The curation and consulting fees, obviously, because this data is siloed, quite frequently we see healthcare facilities, use third-party consultants to come in and, analyze their data, curate their data, give them feedback. And we think that a lot of those fees can be offset because they're going to have access to this data through our system in a curated manner already. That could certainly reduce some of those expenses that they're paying out each and every year to better understand their purchasing habits. And then vendor fraud and abuse, again, this is another proactive management that I can assure you from my experience in the space would be very, very valuable because they can heat off these situations where they potentially are being taken advantage of by over ambitious field representatives of certain companies who tend to utilize more expensive products in place of products that are just as applicable in certain surgeries. And vendor purchasing efficiencies, obviously our largest ticket item. As someone who wrote contracts for many years in the medical device space, I can tell you that there are plenty of incentives that are built into contracts on behalf of facilities to incentivize them to issue purchase orders timely and to pay timely that are upwards of sometimes 5 to 10%. So we take the 2% number there because we're very confident that, by utilizing smart contracts, we not only can we ensure that we're meeting the demands of those contracts, but we're also, for the first time, we'll be able to provide visibility to the accuracy of how efficient a facility are managing these transactions with their business partners to ensure that they are getting the best pricing possible and to manage this effectively. So when we look at total realized cost savings at the bottom, you can see these are significant values for healthcare facilities here. And, so we're anticipating plus or minus about a 4%, savings through utilizing smart contracts in the surgical theater. So in conclusion, the value, we obviously are big believers in the value of smart contracts, and I hope that after this discussion, you are as well. Huge opportunity to reduce administrative spend and complexity in healthcare here, an area where obviously there's a lot of meat on the bone, enable safer, more predictable care delivery, ensuring that products are being used as intended, making sure facilities are properly prepared each and every day, a patient's on the table, and giving real checks and balances digitally to this process that's currently operated like the wild, wild west for many, many years. And most importantly, right, creating interoperability between business partners, creating interconnectivity between parties that allows them both to have visibility to these transactions and creating these digital audit trails, that cycle basically from inventory all the way through settlement, and give folks, acknowledgement that these communications are being received, and making sure that they know that where everything is at in process to ensure that things are being handled appropriately. So that concludes the talk. Thank you very much for your time. It is much appreciated, and hope that we made you a believer today in the validity of smart contracts here in healthcare.